Test 1, test 2. Test 1, test 2. Testing 1, testing 2. Test 1, test 2. I'm guessing it's good.
Hello.
Test 1, test 2. Test 1, test 2. Testing 1, testing 2. Test 1. AGP audio check 1, 2. Test 1, test 2.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the special meeting of the Board of the Cambria Community Services District. If you'll please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We've got a packed hall today for our agenda. We do have a quorum. Vice President Sanders is not going to be here today, so we've got the four other directors. We're going to, because this is a special meeting, I'm going to take public comment on agenda items only, because that's part of the general rules on the Brown Act and special meetings. Is there any, but I don't have any speakers. Oh, I have one speaker slip. Please get a speaker slip in. They're available at the back of the room. And just a little housekeeping, please, if you have a phone, turn it to buzz instead of ring. Public comment. First up is Crosby Swartz, please.
Is it on? Are we on now? Okay. Thank you. I'm Crosby Swartz. I just had a comment. There's two expenditure items that we all recently became aware of, and I was just wondering how they're accommodated for in the budget. The first one was the cost of pumping the water out of the evaporation pond. I know we've been looking at several different ways of doing that, but they all require some kind of a cost. And then the second one is the fines, the water board fines for violating the reporting requirements. Is there anything in the budget to cover the anticipated costs related to that? Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm hoping that we get some answers from staff. Did you get those two questions so that we can, in your report, you can?
Would you like me to answer them now, Madam President?
No, we can do it when we get into doing the report. You can talk about it then. Is that okay?
Whatever you would like.
Okay. Next is Elizabeth Bettenhausen. And I've got two slips for you, one for each of the items, and I'm going...
Before my 3 minutes,
yes.
Why you're doing this in sequence rather than right before each item. It makes it much more difficult for you to retain the excellent questions that we always pose to the board.
Indeed, you make an excellent point, Dr. Bettenhausen, and we're going to take the comments now, and I'm jotting down the questions so that we can cover them when we get to the item. I would like to give you more than just the 3 minutes for the one item, though, because there's two items on this agenda.
I'll stand up in just a moment. But
all right.
I hope I printed out and put in my folder my comments. Ooh, thank myself. I tell you, this plague in the lungs and the sinuses is not comfortable, and it's being shared by approximately 99.62% of Cambrians. So please bear with me if I start hacking away in a nasty fashion. I want to say first, these comments are all written out about the budget. I want to say first, however, that I am still wondering about the flexibility in the audit and what you're going to consider as a board action today. The flexibility of moving hundreds of thousands of dollars from fund to fund. I know that you are wiser in fiscal responsibility as board members than I ever would be, but I draw this to your attention, therefore, for your wisdom and your considered judgment. Because, once again, we have overspent dramatically in water or wastewater, and we borrow from general fund. And I thought I heard you say some years ago, those of you who are here, that you wouldn't do that anymore. So you have to come up with better budgets. And that means I'm putting in an asterisk at the end to say, here we have $500,000 flexible dollars for expending as need arises. My comments, however, if I may start another 3 minutes, my comments are about the budget. In your description from the staff, pardon me, I might sneeze, it says that water sales were expected to be, and I want to thank the finance manager. I sent him questions. He very clearly and helpfully responded to my questions. So I thank this man for his work. Water sales are expected to be $187,000 higher than you thought because usage is up. That means that this will increase the water budget revenue by 9%. Wastewater will be increased by 1.5%, although we have no way of knowing, as readers of the description, whether the $28,300 that will be put there is the totality of the increase in the revenue. That's all that they're recommending that you put there, but we have no idea what the totality of the increase is. The SWF revenues, as you call them, are projected to be $31,475 higher because they go just by water use, and that is in the usage revenue, 30% increase for the usage revenue of SWF. Now, my question is, why did you decide as a finance committee and the board acquiesced to raising the rates by 4% the other day when here we have all this excess revenue from what was projected? Makes no sense to me, but that's for your deliberation, please. Why do we always have major increases instead of decreases in expenditures? I'm mystified. It is the most consistent pattern I have detected since 2002. A child might want a super video, and the game is just on the market, and it's expensive, but the parents will say, we can't afford that, even though they might like to play along. We can't afford that. That's not the reasoning in the CCSD. The CCSD says that's going to be an excellent video. Let's try it out. And then discover that planning results in more comprehensive, bad planning results in more comprehensive need. And that's in your budget today, in your revisions. You've changed the baseline for saying how much water we conserve in September of 2016. I have no idea why you did that. It clearly stated that the years are now 2 years instead of one. Why did you do that? Because now it makes it look like we're still conserving as much, but we aren't. So the conservation image of Cambria still glows in the state, but it's inaccurate depending upon the oranges and apples you're comparing. I have a whole bunch of other things. I'm sure my 3 minutes are going to run out in a second, but I want to say...
You have 2 more minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam President. I very much appreciate that. I'm long-winded as I usually am. I want to ask the question, if there's an 18% increase in the usage of water in Cambria, is this across the board evenly? How does it play out with commercial and residential? Who is using so much more water so fast? Because after the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we increased we were at 70% of the 13-14. Now it's going to go up to 84 by the end of the year. So something's happening in the patterns of uses in this town. I want to know how that plays out. I want somebody to do a pie chart and show who's increasing their use of water in Cambria. I would like you very much, as I said last meeting, to put line item account numbers in your budget. It's very hard for me to judge today where the new full-time staff person who's going to hang out at SWF full-time, no matter if the plant's on or not. We're going to hire this woman or this man on what budget line, on what account number? I can't tell. I couldn't tell last month, and I can't tell this month looking at this material. I would like to know why there is no increase at all in funding conservation policy and program when we've got an 18% increase in water use. Why don't we fund conservation for a change? I will spare you, dear friends. I will spare you my close dollar analysis of resource conservation revenue in the budget under water and resource conservation expenditures, because I'll tell you in one thing, we spend only on lot mergers. That is our sole conservation policy today, apparently. Thank you very much for giving me extra time, Madam President.
You're welcome, Ms. Bettenhausen. I gave Ms. Bettenhausen 2 because she had items on it, both. Okay, so I've got 2 comment slips here that are for public comment, and we're doing public comment in a special meeting is only on items on the agenda. If the board doesn't mind, I would give them 2 minutes to say their piece, but it's up to it's not on items not on the agenda. Okay. So I'm getting not a consensus. So we're gonna move over onto the agenda items.
Could you
A special meeting, the public comment is only for items on the agenda and not for items that are not on the agenda.
I submitted a slip that just put CCSD, but I would like to, I was in a rush to.
Is it something on the agenda?
It's regarding the CCSD budget.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Same here, Amanda.
I don't-
know what to put, so I.
Okay,
Because it said public comment.
so if it's for, yes, then thank you for the clarification. Sherry Bell, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Okay, so this is regarding the budget and an item that's not in it, that is the elephant in the room, so to speak. And that is the $600,000 fines from the notice of violation letters from the board. That's a pretty substantial piece, and it's not in the budget. And I would, in regards to that budget item, I would just like to say how very disappointed I am that there has not been an action to dismiss Jerry Gruber over this $600,000 budget item. And there's been no special meeting called to dismiss him. It's just business as usual. He's failed the community. He's shown himself incapable of doing the work we're overpaying him to do. The cost of the rebranded emergency water facility continue to escalate. We're a community of 6,000 people. We don't have the money to complete the bait and switch water facility this board has saddled us with. We don't have the money to continue to pay for the facility's design errors. We can't afford to buy useless equipment, such as the 4 huge snow blowers that were supposed to help with evaporation of the brine pond. We don't have the money to complete or operate the boondoggle of a water facility this board has indebted us for. We don't have the money to hire and pay for even more specialists to operate it. We don't have the money to pay for a lobbyist who provides the CCSD with information that the general manager and staff can easily find online, as Dr. Bettenhauser and others have shown in the past. We don't have the money to pay to upgrade or replace our aging sewage treatment plant. We especially don't have the money to pay $600,000 in fines for incompetence. And why don't we? Because every cent the CCSD takes in that is not being spent on these overblown salaries of those who have caused us to be fined $600,000 is spent on the board's singular focus, the rebranded emergency water facility. It's time to get rid of Jerry Gruber. We can and we should insist the board do its job and fire him. In an April 27, 2016 issue, the Cambrian Vice President Sanders praised Jerry Gruber. I quote, Jerry Gruber is terrific, a terrific general manager, licensed to manage both sewer and water facilities and is an expert in both. Vice President Sanders goes on to say, and I quote, he has had offers from other agencies, which I have confirmed that he has turned down. Well, now let's see. At the January meeting,
Can we please stick to the budget topic?
these are all having to do with the budget. Jerry Gruber threatened, he boasted actually, that he was going to have a come to Jesus meeting with the Regional Water Control Board. The Water Control
I don't
Board,
see how this is relevant to the budget. Could you
It has to
please
do with
bring
this-
it back to the budget?
well, it has to do with the $600,000 fine that
Which you
the
spoke
issue.
to, yes.
Okay, this continues
Yes.
on that $600,000 fine. The result of we didn't have a come to Jesus meeting. We had instead he was taken to the woodshed with those notice of violations for $600,000. I urge you, we can fire him for cause. We can fire him today.
Excuse me, ma'am, your time is up. Thank you very much.
And please
I
do your
appreciate
job and
input.
fire him.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tina Dickinson?
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. First thing I want to address is what came in the mail to me yesterday, notice of increases to water and wastewater rates. It was dated February 22nd, but the board meeting where this was discussed was on February 23rd. I would like to know why a letter is dated a day before the meeting, before it was discussed amongst the board.
We're talking about the budget right now,
This is
Ms.
about
Dickinson?
rate increases. This is absolutely within the
This is not
scope.
the item on the agenda.
I don't care if it is or not. It's about rate
Ma'am.
increases, which is totally about the budget or the item on the agenda.
We are not talking about the rate increases on this agenda.
Right here, restore balanced budgets. It's right here in the letter, President Rice. Sorry. But anyway, my question is, why would this come out a day before the meeting?
That's not related to the.
You can say that all you want. It says right here, that's wrong. I haven't spoken for 3 minutes.
No, you haven't, ma'am. Can we stick
All
to
right.
the items on the
So,
agenda, please?
yes. So to go to an item that Ms. Bettenhausen addressed, 18% increased water usage. How is that possible when we've had over 40 inches of rain in Cambria? I haven't had to water my yard. I don't know about the rest of the town, but that should have made a huge difference, if anything, in decreasing the amount of water usage. How could it possibly be 18% over? The issue with conservation, that Ms. Bettenhausen, I had that on my items here, but she addressed that. No need to go there. As far as the budget, as far as how finances are managed in this town, I think all of us should be questioning it. I have not had the opportunity to go through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, but I really find it astounding that we can keep spending and spending and spending on one particular item, and that is the EWS/SWF. It's nonstop. That's where our money is going, and we still do not have a CDP. The EIR is not out. So you tell me, board, wherever the rest of the finance committee is, where's the other person that's supposed to be here? That how are you going to go forward paying for this boondoggle out there in San Simeon that has so many issues, continues to have so many issues, and yet you continue to spend and spend and spend our money, not yours. And I think you really need to look again at just how much. I'd like to have an accounting of exactly how much has been spent on this project, because my calculations are way over 20 million and growing. You can laugh all you want, Director Behringer, but start doing the math. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Okay, we're going to get on with the...
Excuse me.
Yes?
Madam President, can I just make a brief comment?
Is it about the budget or the audit?
It's actually about the comments that were made about the budget.
Yes.
I concur with basically everything that has been said in public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll get to that discussion because I would like to hear what you have to say about that. All right, regular business, 3A. General Manager Gruber.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 3A is discussion and consideration to receive a comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2015-16. And we have Mr. Bob Crosby with us today. And if it's okay with the board, Mr. Crosby will come up and give his presentation regarding the audit. And then all the associated documentation with his report is attached to the staff report. So as he's going through it, if you have any questions, they're all within the document here. So thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to make a couple of quick comments. Folks that are here for the meeting, if you have questions that come up because the staff has not made their reports on either thing, and we've already had the public comment, please put your comment down on a card. I'm willing to look at them all because I think it's important, but I don't want to slow down the proceedings of the meeting. So please feel free to do that. The other thing I'd like to point out is that even though the other member of the Finance Committee for this year is not here today, one of the members of the Finance Committee last year is here. And so I'm hoping that between the two of us, we will fill out some of the more detailed information that if directors were not on the committee, they may have. Also, Mr. Gruber, I need a clarification on regarding the recommendations. There's a second recommendation about the staff recommending the board approve a loan from the general fund to wastewater of $466,000. So if you could just address that, either Mr. Crosby or yourself at some point. I want to make sure we're taking I don't remember ever having something like this with an audit as the same action, so I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, I had not done this before. We haven't. One of the items that came up during public comment was that in the past, the district had basically transferred money from the general fund to the enterprise funds without, just made a transfer, and the board did not commit to not making the transfers, but they committed to making a loan from the general fund to the enterprise funds rather than just making a transfer without a loan. So that second paragraph was intended to allow the board to authorize a loan instead of a gift from the general fund to the wastewater fund for the $466,000 that was used by the wastewater fund that they didn't have. If we need to bring it back as a separate agenda item, I can do that. That's not a problem.
I personally would be more comfortable with that, but I want to make sure we have a consensus, so we can deal with that after we go through the auditor's report, if that's all right.
It was a push to get up here. This is tax season, but we did it. Trying to kill off the auditor and the finance guy. I guess you had a little bout with health problems, and you almost didn't see me here today. I had a little problem with my liver, so.
Oh, well,
But I'm back
glad you're here. Thank you for
to
coming.
life again. The financial statements, if you look at last year's and this year's, they look pretty much the same format. The couple changes that we made in the meat of it, I'm going to go through a little bit later, but for most part, there weren't any significant changes like GASB 68, that sort of thing, where we had to do the net pension revenue or liability. The most important pages of this for me are the first two pages, which are the independent auditor report. In this report, it keeps growing and getting longer, but when you read through it, essentially Cambria had a clean opinion this year. There weren't any disclaimers that would indicate anything wrong with anything going on with the financial statements or the accounting. So that's something that we look forward to, and typically that's what I want to see. The management discussion and analysis, that's your part of the report, and it was pretty much the same as the last year, just discussing the economic changes and what's changing in the financial statements. The next portion that I think are the most important are page 2 and 3, which are the statement of net position and the statement of activities. This is a way of converting the whole financial statements into the accrual basis of accounting. The balance sheet, which is a statement of net position, looks favorable as far as a government entity is concerned. If you look at the current ratio, which doesn't actually show very clearly on here because the model it precludes me from doing that. But if you look at the health of the district, it's doing great. We had some concerns last year with no water, no usage of water, emergency water facilities, that sort of thing. I was rather concerned about how you guys are going to pull it out, but this year it looks pretty good, especially with the recent rains. The changes I wanted to say about this, primarily on page 2, we changed something that's been changed or hasn't been changed since I can remember, which would be the amounts due from the different funds, and I've heard people touching on that. It's just something that the district's been doing. It's meant to be a short-term versus a long-term.
I'm sorry, pardon me. I just want to get to be where you are. Where are you?
I'm on page 2, statement of position, net position.
Thank you.
You might have a different page number in your.
No, I see it. I see
Okay.
a page 2 at the bottom. Statement of net position. Got it.
So I think what you're going to see is some due froms not on this page, and it flows through the report, and it's also, okay. The other thing you're going to see that is kind of distressing to me is that the district pays extra money for actuarial reports from the PERS program, and 2 years ago, they did an outstanding job providing us with the information we needed for the minimum requirements for reporting and for the footnotes. This last year, they seemed to be having budget cuts or something because they gave us a very skimpy report. So things that I noticed on the report, they combined the deferred outflows of resources and the deferred inflows of resources. So because yours net out more for deferred inflows of resources, you're going to see a number down there, but not anything up in the assets section. The other thing that distressed me, well, not distressed me, but it didn't, when I'm looking at it from an auditor's standpoint, the net pension liability, relatively new, it's the second year out we've done this. Their numbers, I have not been able to get a clear answer from PERS for your district and any other district as to why the liability went down so much, and especially when their assumptions would make it sound like it would be going up, specifically for return on capital. So I think that some requests of PERS next year when they do their report as to being a little bit more clear. I did talk to one of the guys that solicited all the government agencies. He had a lot to do with this new requirement reporting purpose, and he was actually soliciting his services as to how you could do your reporting of the PERS, which I thought was a little bit a conflict of interest. He indicated to me that they're planning on revamping the whole reporting requirements for this GASB 68. Whether that happens or not, he was influential in the beginning of it, and he is evidently still involved with the new changes. So those are the changes I see in here, and I've detected some in the public comment as to why is the cash short, that sort of thing. If you net out the two, the cash and the due to, due from, I think it reports the district in a better manner. It's not nebulous as to what's in that due to, due from, and that was something that was decided when we did this last report. So I think it's a little more clear. A lot of districts do it that way, and I'm glad to see Cambria's doing it that way, because it's done the other way ever since I can remember. So anyway, as far as the income statement for the district, that's on page 3. We call it a change in net position. You guys had a fairly healthy year this year. That's something that we want to see as far as keeping the district fiscally responsible and being able to do what you guys did in the previous year with this emergency project. As far as the rest of the report, it's primarily the same as the previous year. I don't know if anybody has any questions concerning it, but those are, from what I see as an auditor, are the most important, the pages that affect the district and what the board and the management should be looking at. But overall, the district is in healthy shape compared to some of the other districts I do. Do you have any other questions, or
Could you elaborate on the deferred outflows and the deferred inflows? What was the concern there? Because I heard that you were concerned, but I don't know enough. Can you just elaborate a little bit?
No, those are two new lines
Okay.
brought in by GASB 68, and they basically show what is. It's breaking out the net pension liability a little bit further. When they first came out with GASB 68, they were saying that all we're going to have to do is report on the net pension liability, okay? Then they added these extra 2 lines. These are the assets that are left over from previous years, and these are the liabilities left over, and as a result, we're to report them separately. But they didn't this last year. They net them all out into one number, so. And since yours net out as more of a liability from previous years, they're all shown down in the liability section. So what they probably should have been, they shouldn't have been net out, they should have been grossed up so that any assets available would have been shown up in the deferred outflows of resources. It's kind of confusing. We're combining accounting terminology with actuarial terminology, which has made it kind of difficult for people to understand this. I haven't seen anything on the new proposed or what this fellow was talking about from that was influential in the GASB 68 preparation. I just got from him on the phone. I talked to him. I like to see what these guys have to offer. So,
Are there questions from other directors? Because I do have a few more, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity if they have questions.
Questions and comments?
Director Farmer.
Thank you. First off, Mr. Crosby, I wish you all the best in your health challenge.
oh, I'm fine now.
Oh, you're fine now.
Yes,
Okay, well, I could just recommend, where did you drive up here from?
San Luis Obispo.
Oh, you just over here. Okay, well, enjoy the drive back. Not only is it, a beautiful day outside, but it's downhill going back to San Luis Obispo, so enjoy. So, you mentioned, I'm quoting you here from about 5-10 minutes ago, health of the district is doing great. Those were your words? So, I'm looking here at a couple of pages. First off, on page, if I can find it here really quickly, on page 17, up at the top, on page 17, and, so it says here, 2 significant factors impact the financial strength of the CCSD. They are minimal capacity fee revenue and stagnant customer base. These conditions present significant fiscal challenges to the CCSD. And then I go to page 19. These are the numbers up at the top.
These are not coinciding with my page numbers. Is there another number at the bottom?
This is
In the management discussion and analysis.
This is in the agenda packet, and I'm talking about the numbers up at the top here.
It's XI is page 19.
Okay.
I think that's 11 in Roma.
So it's very confusing, the numbers at the top at the bottom, but this is page 19.
Yeah. All right, and that shouldn't have popped up that way.
He didn't have a copy of our packet, so he doesn't have these numbers.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll let you get to that page. You have a copy of that page in front of you?
I have a copy in front of me, and remember when I was talking about this section, this is the district section, how they can explain in the financial statements any activities that are going on that affect the district. This is something relatively new. This is, if I remember correctly, GASB 34, maybe 32, when this is implemented. So this is the section that falls in after my auditor's report. Anything that says little Roman numeral down at the bottom of that page, and sorry for the word hiccup on, I think they might have had the same one you have. Well, the name got popped down on a couple of the pages on that, so. Anyway, they got corrected in the finals.
So if I could continue, please?
Sure.
Okay. So what it says here, and I'm just following up on your comment, health of the district is doing great. First off, I should probably show this, and I know you don't have it in front of you. I could probably go up and give you a copy of this while I'm speaking. But this is one of the pages from our August 25th general meeting that had to do with the cash flow projection of July 1st, 2016 through 6/30/2017. And basically what it shows is that total revenue is $9.3 million and total expenditures $11.6 million. So what has happened is that the balance has dropped from roughly $5 million in monies that we have in the bank to just under $2.5 million. That's what's happening this year. In other words, a loss of revenue to expenditures of $2.5 million. But then I'm looking here at this page, like I said, page 19 here, and so it references down here in the last paragraph, total cost of maintenance and repair costs. Well, in fiscal year 2008-2009, it was just under $300,000. Just about every year since then, except for one, maintenance and repair costs have increased to where now it's roughly $1 million a year. So it says here, despite all of these expenditures, there is still significant deferred maintenance in both the water and wastewater funds. And then it says, even with the large increases in expenditures noted above, a large number of projects necessary to maintain water and sewer services have been identified, and these costs have the possibility of creating, and I quote, serious economic consequences for the CCSD. So let me ask you this. I mean, from this wording here, it's kind of in conflict from what you just said. The health of the district is doing great. So let me just ask you a couple of questions, especially since these serious economic consequences are not for the district, they are for the ratepayers of this community. Let's keep that, we need to keep this in perspective. So let me ask you, in your opinion, what's the major contributing factor to this dilemma that we have greater expenditures than we have revenue coming in, and this is an ongoing set of circumstances that we have that don't appear to be changing in the near future?
Well, this seems to be a problem with a lot of districts and governmental units.
This district, sir.
Okay, well, it's common for all of them in that the infrastructure is getting very old, and as a result, it tends to require more repairs and maintenance. And when I first started auditing, I remember the city of New York had a great, wonderful financial statement one year, and then the next year they were filing for bankruptcy. Why was that? Because their infrastructure failed them all at once. And as a result, all those liabilities hit them at once. So as the district here gets older and the engineer evaluates your system, there are going to be more and more repairs are going to be required in the future to keep up with the needs of the system because it's getting old. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, but I do want to make a comment about a document that we received yesterday. Yesterday, Director Behringer and I were over at the wastewater facility, and General Manager Gruber and Engineer Greshens were there, as well as wastewater supervisor John Alchin. And they gave us a very complete and thorough, how could we say, tour of the facility. And then at the end we met, and Engineer Greshens brought out the wastewater capital improvement program. And I want to say, here's a copy of it. And it's very detailed. I want to congratulate Bob for the hard work that he's done on this with regard to the expenditures that we have in the, let's say, in the relatively immediate and to long-range future of our district with regard to the amount of money that needs to be spent on the wastewater facility, which is roughly $7.75 million. And that doesn't take into account the fact that we may actually have to replace the wastewater facility, which may be $10 to $14 million. This is what Supervisor John Alchin said yesterday. He's a wastewater supervisor. So let me just ask you, if this trend, in other words, expenditures outpacing revenue continues, and this is ongoing to where if it continues in this regard, we will have roughly $2.5 million in the bank at the end of this fiscal year. And if it continues in this trend, we will have zero money in the bank in about a year and a half at the end of the following fiscal year. What are the consequences if this trend continues and we have this added expenditure with regard to the wastewater facility and, as pointed out, the ongoing expenditures that keep popping up with regard to the emergency water facility?
Well, it's based on the budget and what's needed in the future to fix all this infrastructure and planning as to how that's going to be funded. If you need a new treatment plant, currently your financial statements look good as far as the assets and liabilities. So in order to get funding, that's going to be monumental in going out and getting the bonds necessary to build a new plant if that's what's required.
Well, when you say, pardon me for interrupting, but when you say assets and liabilities, you're talking about the value of the plants, the value of the equipment that we have going around, that type of thing. But it's not like we can cash that in and get funds. So it's assets on paper only. It's not something that we can, that we can take from and have money to finance what we need to do.
That's not exactly what I said when I was discussing the statement of net position. I referred to your current assets, which would leave all the fixed assets off of that grouping. I'm more looking at anything above intangible water master plan as what's current, and then I take that and look at what's current down below the line in liabilities as to what's due within the next 1 year. And if there's a problem there, if your current assets aren't going to handle your current liabilities, then we have what they call a going concern situation. Okay, I don't see that here with the numbers as of June 30th, 2016. Now, we're almost a year late on this thing. This was done back in, when did we get this thing done? In November, December? It's pretty much done in November, so it's just health issues and that sort. We could have gotten this out sooner, but I guess the board had other agenda items. But that's what we're looking at. That's what I look at when I see these things, because when I look at capital assets, the depreciable, non-depreciable, I've always been told they're not assets. They're actually, like you're saying, liabilities. They could blow up at any time. And based on the assumptions of the engineer, the studies they've done, and what is planned out for future repairs, that's monumental as far as keeping up with this stuff. And
Correct.
I think Bob's had a good handle on this thing from what I've.
Well, let me just say this. Bob did an excellent job in preparing this document. I will give him credit on that. However, the fact that the wastewater facility continues to, and let me say this much, John Alchin has done an excellent job in doing repairs and upgrades on the facility. But there's ongoing challenges that exist over there. That's why I show you this document. That's $7.75 million as to the repairs that are needed in the very near and foreseeable future. So I'm just going to let me just say this. The average person out there living from week to week, month to month, year to year, you try to save a little bit here and there. You plan for, unintended, unexpected circumstances, but you try to basically live within your budget. I think that's what most people try to do. Correct?
Right.
Yeah. If we had a household that operated like this, that every year you had half as much money, let's put it this way, revenue, expenditures don't match. You're spending more money than you have. Even with an income, you're spending more money than you have. And you don't have a credit card to charge it all on and just hope it vaporizes into thin air. What are the consequences of this ongoing behavior that we have here? I mean, an average person trying to run a household the way we're running this district, it's not happening. I mean, that's the way I see it, and if you can explain it differently to me, I'd really love to hear it.
Well, I haven't seen the document there, but I'm assuming that you're saying that these $7 million in
Oh, not just that. No, totally ignore that. I mean, we can just not even pay attention to that. I'm just saying that we're spending more money than we're bringing in. And there's no real way to increase revenue except maybe get a bond or increase water rates, but we're already doing that. All I'm saying is, and maybe you don't need to follow up on this because I think it says in the front here, 15 minutes per segment, at these two. Yet I felt like there's and like I said here, this is your words, serious economic consequences for the way things have been here.
Those aren't my words. Those are the district's words.
Well, okay. Boy, that's even worse.
So
that's even worse. I don't want to take any more of your time.
Well,
enjoy your drive home. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question on the statement of cash flows page, which is page 10. I'm looking at the on 10 on the bottom, 30 at the top. I'm looking at the cash flows from non-capital financing activities, the interfund loan paid. So this says that there was an interfund loan that was paid from the wastewater, I'm assuming, to the general fund?
Well, remember what I was telling you, the due to, due froms?
Yes.
That's where that shows up on that cash
So in
flow.
addition to this loan that was paid back of almost 700,000, there's an additional 466 that we are going to need to transfer?
Essentially what it's doing is combining the two accounts. So, and this is tracking the cash flows.
Okay.
So because I'm taking it off the revenues and the expenditures, or the assets and liabilities, it has to be fit in here somewhere as far as tracking where the cash. So I'm just transferring that amount into the cash account up above. It makes more sense if you take a look at last year's financial statements.
Okay.
I would highly recommend looking at that, and you'll see what's actually transpiring here. So, but you don't see any interfund due to, due froms anymore. We wanted to get rid of that nebulous subject. Nobody knew what that was. It was just, this is an accumulation of transfers between the district's funds over who knows how long. So I prefer to show it the way we're showing it now, where all the transfers are actually handled through cash, okay? And the cash account, so you actually see one cash account, I think it was on page 8, the wastewater fund. There's a deficit in the cash account for wastewater, but if you look at previous year, you would have seen a large liability down below the line in liabilities for due to, due from. So it was a lot of money's due from that fund to the other funds.
So correct me if I'm wrong, if this is my understanding. This is saying that as of June 30, 2016, the wastewater fund was almost $466,000 overspent.
Overspent, but
They spent more money than they had.
No, that's what they had at the end of the year. The 400
was a minus 466.
Right. But if you look at the previous year, they had $689,000 in a due to account where they owed the other. I have last year's right here.
So there was so last year it would have been noted differently, but is essentially
we
the
just
same
combined the two lines. So take a look at it, you'll see what's going on there. I think it reflects it more accurately.
Because that sure doesn't make it seem like we're doing okay when we have to make interfund loans like that.
Well, it's just catching up with previous years and cleaning house, basically.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Director Thompson?
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit on that, I understand that enterprise funds can only be used within those certain categories. For instance, funds raised as a result of wastewater fees have to be used within the wastewater treatment plant. Is that correct?
Right, right.
So basically then, one could assume that we weren't charging enough for our wastewater. Is that why we have a $467,000 deficit
Well,
there?
yes, over a period of several years. So, like I said, look at last year's. You'll see that it was about $200,000. If you net the two out, well, it was $138,000. It would have, if we did this last year, you would have shown a deficit of $138,000. So yes, you showed some excess expenditures due to the
So
credit to the wastewater.
The only option then is to borrow money from the general fund to offset that, I would assume, because we did not have any more revenue coming in from those enterprise funds.
Well, the water fund has the two of them net together and have a positive 624,000. And I don't remember what the net was. Yeah, there was a lot worse last year. If you look at due to other funds, accumulation of $2.7 million in those two funds.
And
net to be net against 956,000. So
just to
if you're just going by those two accounts, it's
to respond a bit to what Director Farmer pointed out, that we need $7 million or thereabouts for wastewater repairs and so forth. I think the notation on page 9 is interesting, because basically, we have only minimal capital revenue because we have had stagnant customer base and little or no growth in revenue in those areas. If we were to start at some point in time releasing water meters, Director Farmer, we could raise somewhere around $16 million for capital improvements, and those could certainly go a great way to dealing with that issue of the repairs in the wastewater plant. Just
Thank you.
That remains to be seen.
Thank you, Director Farmer and Director Thompson. I have a question on page 21. It's in note 5 on long-term debt. I think I understand what each of the columns, except for the final one, which says current. Does that mean that should be, that's within the fiscal year of ending in 16, or?
That's currently due by June 30th, 17.
17.
Right.
So this should, in theory, this amount should be somewhere shown in the 16-17 budget, the current column that says current.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, because that was a bit confusing. The whole thing is a bit confusing. It's a very dense product, and I appreciate you going to the details.
I think that's why page 2 and 3 were implemented here, because before that, they weren't there.
Yeah.
And so you're dealing with two types of accounting procedures. There's the modified cash for the governmental funds, and then there's the accrued, the accrual basis for the enterprise fund. So we're combining the two together in page 2 and 3. So it makes it easier to understand. Before you had to hunt and peck to figure out where everything was.
Did you, on internal controls, because we're looking at the bigger picture, did you look at any of the internal controls, things like tracking mileage or fuel inventory or anything like that?
I look at things that show any kind of major fluctuations, and then we look at the overall performance of the office. You guys have been cutting the staff like crazy, so but it looks like everything you guys have been doing as far as the office has been adequate to keep the duties separated, so there's no possibility of internal controls being breached, that sort of thing, or it limits the ability. In a small office like the less people you have to run the office, the bigger the liability you have as far as somebody actually making off with the assets out the back door. But I think Jerry's been doing a good job as far as overseeing it, overseeing Patrick, making sure that things are reconciled. I just came across one district that just continually does this over and over and over again. They refuse to get a decent accounting system, and the people that work there is very limited, and they cannot keep their internal. I had to just leave them last year. I couldn't do it. You don't have that problem here. You guys, as much as you guys complain about your accounting system, at least it's adequate to cover the internal controls of the district. So.
And then in comparison with other districts, I'm looking here on page 19, which is note 5, long-term debt, near the, in the narrative part of it, it talks about there's a loan to purchase vehicles, and the loan looks like it's split pretty evenly, 2/3, 1/3. But I'm not sure that actually reflects the vehicles that were purchased, so that it's the cost is spread correctly between the fire department and whatever other department is got the benefit of the vehicle.
That was a management decision back when the vehicle was purchased, so that can always be changed if you want to change it.
So and that's mainly an accounting thing, but
Right.
But I mean, I don't want the water department to be paying for, if most of the money went to the vehicles for fire, I mean, it shouldn't be paid for by water.
Well, those are kept separate. I mean, as far as fire, I mean, that's specifically for fire.
Okay, I was just trying to make sure that we were our bases were covered on those. It was just questions that I had. Director Farmer.
Thank you. I do want to say this, Mr. Crosby, that from what I observe, the majority of staff at the office here are hardworking and efficient people. And I don't think we need, and honest. And I don't think we need to worry about money going out, as you said, the back door. It's the other ways that the money is going out that we're more concerned about, if you don't mind me saying that. But you mentioned earlier, you used this term about 5 or 10 minutes ago when you were talking about how monies get moved around, wastewater doesn't have enough, so we borrow from the general fund or whatever, and you used the term cleaning house. Now, I don't know quite how does the term cleaning house apply to moving money from one place to another? Is that a common term, or you just kind of threw that out there as a way of defining what's going on?
I use that as a term in that the cash is kept in accounts that are combined. So if you went to look at the wastewater account, you wouldn't see a checking account with a negative balance in it. It's just that's what's been allocated to that particular fund. So what happened in the previous year is that fund was recording some liabilities that the wastewater fund had not paid back to the other funds. So what's been done is that liability has been just eliminated and applied to their cash account as if they did try to pay it back. So that you're only looking in one spot as far as how that fund is actually performing. Primarily because I couldn't get a straight answer. These due to, due from accounts have been going since I can remember. I mean, it's just something that has never been addressed with the district. And so, again, I prefer the way that has been handled, and it wasn't a decision I made, it was a decision that was made with the Jerry and Patrick. And I think it actually shows a cleaner looking at report.
You just said about a minute ago, couldn't get a straight answer with regard to the accounting thing. I was not born with the accounting gene, but couldn't get a straight answer. Could you elaborate on that?
A straight answer for,
Your comment, couldn't get a straight answer from the district.
as far as the due tos, due froms?
Yeah.
It's just been a running total for those funds, and it's, as long as they balance, everybody's fine with it. That's all I have to do is make sure they balance. But I think it shows a better.
But they don't.
They do. If you add up all the due tos, due froms in the financial statements from 2015, they tally up.
Mr. Crosby, CCSD cash flow projection for this fiscal year, revenue, 9.3 million, expenditures, 11.6 million. We're running in the red.
Director Farmer,
Am I looking at
maybe
the...
different fiscal year? We're looking, the audit is on the 15-16 fiscal year.
Okay. All right.
And
Apologies.
I always remind the board too, if something doesn't make sense or you have a thought in the middle of the night, don't call me in the middle of the night, but wait till the next day and give me a call if Jerry or Patrick can't answer the question. So it's going to be hard to get a hold of me till about April, I would say 20th this year. But I would be glad to answer your questions or provide you with an answer.
Okay, well, I am looking at the fiscal years, and I will slightly concur with what you're saying, that things have been relatively balanced overall in the scheme of things up until now. But for what I have here, this is CCSD cash balances by fiscal year, and it shows here fiscal year 2015. Things don't look, for fiscal year 2015, things look a little bit irregular to me just on this graph alone. But we should probably just move on. I've taken up way too much time. Thank you.
Yes, I was just about to ask if there was anything that you would like to say.
I just want to try to clarify about the cleaning house. That was part of my responsibility, I guess. If you look at last year's financial statement and you look at the wastewater fund, and I don't remember the numbers because I don't bring it, but it said they had about $400,000 in cash. But then down below that, another line, it said it owed $600,000 in cash. So in fact, it was $200,000 in the hole. But if you look at the financial statement, it looked like they had cash, which they did not. So what Bob concurred with is that we did away with that due to and due from stuff so that you could look at cash and know how much cash was in that fund. That's all we did. Now, he used the term cleaning house, and that's an okay term, but it's much more clear now to the layman person who looks at that report, because now they know that we're $466,000 in the hole in the water fund. Last year, they would have thought just the opposite. That's the reason we did it.
And I don't think that's a small thing to do. I think it's an important thing to be doing, whether it's called cleaning house or not. It does make the statements more clear. I would like to suggest that we take the second recommendation as a separate item. I don't know how soon we need to do it for fiscal whatever reasons, but if it's okay with the rest of the board for us to just accept the audit today, and then we can consider that. I'll put it on the agenda for, I'm sure March is already full, but.
Madam President, would you
Yes.
ask that Haley call for a vote on the acceptance of the audit so we can?
Absolutely. We have to have a motion, though, before we do that.
Thank you,
I
Madam.
move that we accept the audit.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Director Behringer?
Aye.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure working with outstanding staff. It's nice to see the expertise that I'm working with.
Thank you very
Dan.
much.
By the way, Mr. Crosby, if I'm correct, wasn't Bing Crosby, his real name was Harry Crosby, wasn't his brother Bob Crosby?
Bob Crosby and the Bobcats. They
Yeah.
used to play out of Santa Catalina Island.
Cool. Well, I just hope that next time we see you, you'll be singing a happy tune. Thank
Well,
you.
I won't get into that. You guys have a heavy agenda. Thanks again.
And I would just, as a follow-on, I want to make sure that we are, Mr. Crosby's done a good job for us for the past 9 years, but I did see we are putting out an RFP to change auditors. It's about time, yes?
Yes, we have, and we've got some responses back, so.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, General Manager Gruber. All right. I didn't get any questions from the audience, but I still welcome those if anybody has written comments they'd like to make, and I can try and get them addressed. Mr. Gruber, discussion and consideration on the next item of regular business? B.
Yes, Madam President, and board members, item 3B is discussion and consideration to adopt resolution 082017, approving amendments to the CCSD budget for fiscal year 2016-2017. We'd like to start out with a PowerPoint presentation by Patrick, and then he can go ahead and give a brief explanation, and then both of us can answer any questions that the board may have about the budget, including the ones that you sent us, Madam President.
All right. Thank you. Patrick, are you ready? Do we need to take a break? Okay.
Well, can you, if I just tell you, can you advance it?
I can help you out with that, no problem.
Okay, so we're ready to go, or do you need a break? Okay. Yeah. Can we trim the lights a bit to make it easier to see, please? Thank you for the suggestion, Director Thompson. Mr.
May I
McKinnon?
turn off that bag of lights so the screen will be clearer?
Yes, I think that's what we just requested. Thank you.
This is the wrong. Was there more than one presentation in this? This is, excuse me, that's the wrong presentation?
I was given was only those two things. It was this one and the one that was on there before.
It was the one that was on before, I think. Mhm. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon.
Okay, that's it.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, what I'd like to do is just briefly go through each department or fund and talk about and hit the highlights, and then at the end of that time, after I've done it, you can ask questions as I go along, or at the end we can discuss more things in detail. This is a summary of what the approved agenda resolution would look like. So this is not, when it says change to fund balances, it's not as a result of what we're changing today, but it's the whole thing. What we started with, what we do today, this is what we would end up with. And it's about $150,000 more in the hole than what we started with. Next slide, please.
When you say when we started with the budget that was approved in
The previously approved budget.
the previously approved budget.
Yes.
Thank you.
In the fire department, we started with a negative budget of $14,500. If this budget today is approved, it'll increase that to about a deficit of about $60,000. The biggest impact here is in staffing for overtime, and there was a very detailed explanation of why we're going to be about $100,000 higher in overtime than we had anticipated. When we did the transition from a chief, while we were recruiting, we had to use overtime to fill quite a few positions, and that's the major reason. Okay. Thank you. That's the major reason that fire is going to be a little over budget. In facilities and resources, we started with a balanced budget. We're asking that the board approve a $21,000 deficit budget. We've collected, or project we're going to collect about $10,000 less, well, actually 16 if you look at both of them, in vets hall rental fees. The private events are not, we're not experiencing as many of them as we had anticipated. And the normal rents, we've been working with local communities, organizations, more than we had anticipated. We're giving them more discounts than we had anticipated. So instead of getting 30,000 in revenue, we think we're going to have 20,000 in revenue. So basically, we're going to have 16,000 less in revenue and about a $6,000 increase in the maintenance repair for buildings. Adds up to the 21,000. Park and Rec, there's really no change. The big expenditures in here are for what's the project called?
It's the East Ranch
Yeah.
Phase 1 Park Improvement Project.
And we're probably not going to spend as much in there as we had budgeted, but we'll only use as much of the grant that's not grant, the funds that are available, so there won't be any change to the cash flow. In the admin department, we started out with a balanced budget. Whoops. We started out with a balanced budget right here, and we're projecting, I'm going the wrong way. I'm projecting that we're going to have $156,000 surplus. We have a little increase in revenue, about $10,000, mostly due to a workers' comp refund. We got almost $8,000 for a workers' comp refund. But the reductions in expenditures we're going to have are about $146,000. And the biggest part of that is in staffing. When we developed the budget last year, we included pay raises for MCE personnel, and we expected those to be approved early in the fiscal year around November, and that didn't happen until February. And it was at a lower rate than what we had anticipated, so we're basically going to save a substantial amount of money because of that. Wastewater, we started with a balanced budget. Now the budget projects a $232,000 deficit. There is a slight increase in revenue, and I'm going to talk real quickly about this water use thing. It's a very complex, well, it's not that complex, but you have to understand it before it makes sense. The base year for the state of California for water consumption is 2012-13. And we have always, before this meeting, as far as I'm aware of, we have always talked about our consumption compared to 2012-13. And that's fine. And right now we're running about 66 to 70% of our 2012-2013 consumption. And but for budget purposes, when we did the rate study, we used year 2013-2014. And the consumption in 2013-2014 was substantially less. Where is it here? Right here. Was substantially less than in 2012-13. So when we're looking at the budget, if we had 70% of 2012-13 consumption, that's actually 82% of 2013-14 consumption. So the revenue that we're getting is 14% higher, 12 to 14% higher than it would have been it's hard for me to describe this, but we're actually getting the same amount of sales as we have projected based on 12-13, but higher than the sales we projected based on 13-14. That's why we're having, there's no magic, there's no confusion, there's no use of an eraser here to make things look better. It's just, it depends on what year you're looking at. And the rate study was 13-14. And so we're at 82% of 13-14 numbers, which means we're substantially higher than what we had budgeted we would receive in revenue. And that's going to continue for every year forward, as long as we stay at this current level of revenue. Does that make sense? Sir.
Director Berenger.
When we were doing the rate study,
Yeah.
we thought that we were going to go back to 70% of what year?
Well, my recollection is, we thought it was going to be 70% of 1213.
That's what I remember too, when we were.
And that is in fact where we are. But the usage that the rate study is based on is this 164,000. And that is 70% of 2013-14.
Okay.
So when we've always talked about it, we've talked about 1213, but the numbers that were actually used in the study were 13-14.
So we are going to be getting more revenue than we anticipated if we're at 70% of 12-13.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Can we at some point try and align those things so we're not talking about a million different?
Well, the difficulty is that we have to comply with the California requirements, and the California requirements use 1213.
So maybe-
What I've done in my general manager's report for the next month, for this month, I've put two charts on there. One that compares to 1213 for looking at California purposes, and then one that looks at 1314 to look at rate study purposes.
Okay,
So
thank
to
you.
try to help people, it's a difficult concept to understand, but once people understand, then they'll be able to look and say, okay, yeah, this is where we are.
Thank you.
Okay. So back to wastewater, we do have slightly more revenue, about $28,000 more than we had budgeted, because when I developed the budget, I was using 1213 as the base year, and I assumed that was the revenue we'd get. And in fact, I had done that wrong. It should have been 1314. On the other side, we have in the collection system, we've spent $7,500. We project we're going to spend $7,500 more than what we've already spent. That's mostly for digging pipes up and repairing them. There's been a lot of repair work done. Treatment plant repairs, we're looking at almost $60,000 more in repair. We spent already in excess of 30 on the SCADA system to improve the SCADA system, and there are other repairs that we think we're going to definitely need before the end of the year. For M&R grounds, we've spent the majority of that money to remove trees, especially on the treatment plant, but also out in the field where the distribution system, trees were in the way of doing maintenance on the pipe and the manhole covers, and so we had to have access to them, so we had to get rid of those trees. Utilities, the electricity use has dramatically increased, and we've done the things that we can do to try to cut back on it, but it's going to continue at a much higher level than it was before because of the way we're operating the plant now. And then the sludge, this utilities water is going to be more than double what we budgeted, and that's because that water is used in the sludge treatment process, and we're now treating sludge all year round instead of only once a year. And so there's a lot more water going into that process. So that's where we get the 232,000 deficit. Some of those things will not carry over into next year, but some of them will. The sludge process we're going to do that year round from now on. And it still remains to be seen how much we need to do in the way of working with trees. That's another huge impact. Water operations, we started out with a surplus, $34,000 surplus, and we're now saying we're going to have a $415,000 deficit. The primary reason is that because we thought we could get a loan, a low-interest loan from the state for $660,000 for the Fiscalini water tank replacement. It turned out we were unable to do that, so we have to self-fund that. If we had gotten that loan, then this number would be $185,000 surplus. So we're doing okay in the water department, except for the inability to get that loan. Basically, we had to fund it this year out of the cash we had this year.
Can we make a comment now, or should I wait till you're
Oh,
finished?
no, it's fine, sure.
Okay, so we were unable to get that loan. Why was that?
Why was that?
Yeah.
What I was told from the state was that since we had already started the project, we didn't qualify for the loan. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And so it doesn't feel as if we were, let's say, being responsible in how we dealt with the problem with regard to putting in for the application before we started the project.
You know, it would have been, in my opinion, it would have been a lot more irresponsible to have that tank fail and wipe out homes downhill. And that was an attitude of the staff. We didn't want to take that chance.
You know, we were, Director Farmer, we were only doing what we were told to be doing or instructed by the state staff. So, again, that tank was identified several years ago as being in jeopardy of a catastrophic failure. So, the tank is up and running now. It's brand new, and also from a fire protection standpoint. So we self-funded it. It's done. It's completed. And but it does. You're absolutely right. It does represent a big deficit within this budget. But ultimately, it had to be done.
You just said that a problem with that tank was identified, in your words, several years ago. So if it was identified several years ago, why why didn't we take the initiative at that time and begin the necessary repairs?
What I would like to be able to do, and hopefully I can articulate this, is the overall operations of both the water and the wastewater represent a perfect storm, is what I call. I don't really want to blame anybody. I don't want to blame staff, and if you want to blame me, I guess you can. But 6 years ago, when I took over as your general manager, a lot of the infrastructure deficiencies that we have still exist, but a lot of them have been addressed. And it's not because of staff's inability. It's because of as Mr. Crosby indicated, you have an alien infrastructure. The infrastructure was built in the early 70s, and Bartles and Wells did a really good job in articulating through a series of graphs why we're in the situation we're in. I don't like to look backwards. I like to look forwards. I don't like to say we should have or could have raised rates and we didn't. But in order for you to maintain an infrastructure, whether it's this infrastructure or any infrastructure, what should be implemented over an extended period of time is 5% increases every year. And we're seeing it throughout the United States, not just Cambria. I mean, you're seeing dams fail, you're seeing bridges fail, you're seeing roads fail in all communities. So we're a microcosm of that. So if you go back 25 years, and maybe it'd be helpful at the next board meeting, but if you go back 25 years and we take that graph, those series of charts that Mr. Bartles Wells, Alex Handler showed, it showed that for whatever reason, we did not raise rates gradually and consistently over an extended period of time to cover inflation, but to also cover the replacement value of our infrastructure. So that's A. Number B is it takes two things to operate a utility company. It takes constant and continuous upgrading of your infrastructure. It takes gradual rate increases so you're not in the situation that we're in right now. And it takes, from a capital perspective, of selling meters. And I'm saying that not for a growth, no growth. I'm simply stating a fact. So the last 14 years, we haven't been able to sell meters, and that was a policy decision, and I respect that. But say if we were able to sell meters at, say, for a water and wastewater meter, let's say $25,000, which is a very good price for both of those. If we were selling 10 per year, that's $250,000. Times 10 would be $2.5 million times, so we would have brought in $3 or $4 million, or close to $3 million just from that aspect. In addition to that, if we would have gradually been raising rates, we would have been in a lot better shape than we are now. The things that we're facing as far as the $7.2 million that you're talking about for the wastewater treatment plant, those things can be resolved if the revenue is available. Unfortunately, the revenue is not available. Since water and wastewater are regulatory and environmentally driven, in many instances we can't wait. When something needs to be repaired, it needs to be repaired. So I hope that helps a little bit. If we were able to generate the revenue that needed to be generated, and if we would have gradually raised rates, we would be in a lot better situation. I don't want to keep looking in the rearview mirror. I want to look forward. I want to look forward and see how we can resolve some of these deficiencies. Historically, if you look back at the budget, and we can do a spreadsheet on this, when I came on board, we had in the enterprise funds, water and wastewater, we had reserves, if you want to call them that. Those reserves were not there because of enough revenue being generated. Those reserves were there because the projects identified within fiscal year budgets were not getting done. So we spent those down, we got those projects done, and we continue to do the things that we need to do. It's just that situation. It's not it's not mismanagement. It's not irresponsibility on staff. It's a simple dollars and cents formula, and we're playing catch up, and we're going to play catch up for several more years. I do see some light at the end of the tunnel. I think when I was down at the wastewater treatment plant with Director Farmer and Director Berenger yesterday, I had never seen the plant look as good as it has. And so we're turning the corner. And we need to just continue to, put emphasis on the infrastructure and continue to make sure that we're making those improvements. I know that's a long answer, but it's
Thank you,
Yes,
Director Berenger.
Yes, this isn't really a rate study. What we're looking at now is a budget, and the remaining 3 months that we have on this budget, and next year's budget is going to be a challenge. When we were just to clarify, it is a $7 million issue, but next year, the chunk that we're going to be looking at in 16-17 looks like about $1 million and maybe a little bit more. So, and compared to what we've been doing in the past, it's going to be a significant increase, and I think that's something we're going to need to take care of. We also have to, also just as a comment, when we looked at the rate study, and we did the rate study to, I don't think we put very much in at all for capital improvements, maybe half a million or something like that.
No, we had set in to make a loan for $1 million, but that wasn't for wastewater, it was for water.
For water, yeah.
Yeah.
So the wastewater department was more or less ignored as far as the rate study goes. And when we studied the rate study last time, we needed to fairly, by law, not penalize one class of customer compared to another, and we stretched it pretty far, and I think we did a good job as far as of making sure that the business is paid well. Also, when we look at the rate study for wastewater, there's a high likelihood that the heavy users tend to be businesses, so perhaps we can make sure that we're all paying the right fare. But it's also pretty clear that if we're going to address the wastewater problem, we might want to consider a rate study. And I think in your budget, you actually have, in the water department, a potential rate study. So, and that is, I think that is in the wastewater budget. So that was just and I was on the board when the Fiscalini tank, right after I got on the board, the Fiscalini tank was swum, meaning somebody went in it and swam around in it and declared that it was okay. And a few years later, maybe 4 years later, another consultant determined that it was near a catastrophic failure. And that's so. We either, do you believe the one guy that swims around in it, or do you believe the other guy? And when it comes to a projection of a catastrophic failure, you take action as soon as the board, and it was brought to this board, we did in fact approve the replacement of the project. Unfortunately, we didn't have an application in, but I don't think that program even existed at the time. We did what was needed to do. Thanks.
Thank you for those clarifications. Before we get into the SWF part of the budget, I'd like to
Excuse me, I just want to make one more brief comment.
Can I finish what I was saying, Director Farmer? Before we get into the SWF part of the budget, I want to make sure that we get the questions answered on the main part of the budget. So, Director Farmer.
Thank you. When General Manager Gruber, when you began talking, a few minutes ago, actually the topic was you were referencing what I commented on with regard to the inability to obtain funds to repair the Fiscalini water tank. And I know we've got great people out there in the field doing work. It's an unfortunate situation that somehow the decline of the Fiscalini water tank we were not on top of that. So let me just say this, we now have the small Stewart Street tank that we recently discovered is in a tremendous disrepair and will probably have to be shut down and either replaced or certainly repaired. So I just want to say, as I did at the last meeting, that I would encourage us to somehow seek grant funding or low interest loan funding to take care of that instead of taking it out of our own funds. Thank you. That's a budget thing.
Okay, thank you, Director Farmer. All right, I have some questions, and the first one's kind of just a basic. We see the revenues coming in higher, and we're putting the expenditures out higher, and we're still ending up in the red. Specifically to the allocated overhead. The allocated overhead in the fire department, actual to date to January 31st, does not appear to be proportionally correct. If we're doing that just as a basic amount per month or whatever divided out by can you address that, please?
Yeah, it's a spreadsheet, and I have to update every field on that spreadsheet, and I have failed to do that accurately, and I'll correct that. But yeah, you're right. Overhead doesn't change. It's the same all year, and at the end of the year, it will be what it's budgeted at. So the year-to-date, you're correct for that field, it was incorrect.
Okay, and then the question that I have about allocated overhead across all of the departments, when I look at the budget that was presented and approved at the June meeting, which we only have one person who was here today, who was there for that meeting to approve that budget, but when I look at the allocated overhead, the amounts are identical to this budgeted change. But the budgets are different, so are you saying that I don't know how the allocated overhead is allocated or managed, and I don't need to get into the specific details, especially not on this one, because next year, for sure on the budgeting, it seems to me if a lot of the expenditures are changing and the amount in a certain fund for the budget is different, why is there no, it was the amounts in the allocated overhead make it so that each of the funds balances to zero? Is that just a coincidence? That the amount of allocated overhead in the June approved budget made each of the budgets balance to zero?
It did last year. The overhead is allocated out of the administrative department, so
Right.
that it always has a net zero balance at the end of the year.
So that the admin department has a net balance zero?
Yes, so the admin, we have fire, facilities and resources, park and rec, admin, and then we have a water fund and a wastewater fund. Our administration serves all of those
Right.
organizations. So we take whatever it costs to operate administration and we allocate it out to those departments who incur the costs, who absorb the costs.
So it's just coincidental that the amount of money left over in, say, water in June is the amount that was charged as allocated overhead to make everything come out zero?
Well, what goes into the admin department has to be exactly the same as what's paid by all the other departments. And what I did last year and what's been done in the past is we've taken property tax and overhead are combined. So we take property tax and we allocate it to fire, facilities and resources, park and recreation, and administration. And then whatever's not covered in administration, we take as overhead and we allocate that to all of the departments. And in the past, what we've done is we've allocated enough property tax to fire, facilities and resources, and park and recreation to make them be zero balance. And what that does is that ends up impacting the admin department, because whatever's left over out of admin has to be allocated then back to everybody else, including fire and facilities and resources, park and rec, water and wastewater. It's a very complex process. It typically doesn't change during the year. I could go in and change it every month, but I don't have time to do that.
No, and I'm not suggesting that we do that. What I'm suggesting is that there's deficits, and we're in the red in the water and wastewater, and if we weren't taking so much for allocated overhead, we could make it balance. It would reduce the amount of money in the admin department by a significant amount, like something like $889,000,
Right.
which then would make the admin department in the negative by a significant amount of money. So it doesn't change regardless. And so next year when we're doing the budget, it's not going to be that the allocated overhead is just going to happen to make it out to zero. Because otherwise I don't understand why we wouldn't be doing that now. Because we know we're going to have to spend the money on some of the things in each of those departments.
The reason you don't do it is because you have to, there's a general fund, a water fund, and a wastewater fund. And each of those funds has to pay their fair share.
Right.
And it's just a matter of determining what is their fair share.
Okay.
In the past, we've determined their fair share by taking the staff. I actually have a chart, I could show it to you.
Okay, well, we can get into the weeds of it when we're looking at the budget as the finance committee, but because I have some other questions that are, so I'm looking, there's a bunch of things in all of the departments where there's a budgeted amount, and then there's because there's three columns: the budgeted, the actual spent, and the recommended amended amount. So there's a bunch of ones in here, and specifically I'm looking at the admin department right now that says $15,000 has been budgeted for the auditor, and I know the reason why we haven't spent any for that one right now is probably we haven't got his bill yet. And so that $15,000 is still there in the amended budget, which is the same amount. But on things like, say, on the next page, you look at the capital outlay replacing the servers, $35,000. How can I tell if that is in process or not? Like, it seems to me if your revenues are not exceeding your expenditures, that maybe you would want to tighten up the amount, the estimates of what you're going to spend in a certain department. And I noticed the fire department's done a pretty good job of sticking within what they need to be spending, even though they're going to be in the red too. Can you kind of address that, why you wouldn't change something that's...
Yeah, the budget, is authority from the board to the staff to
Right.
take action.
Right.
So the servers, we haven't ordered them yet this year, but we may. And so if I come back to you and say, well, we haven't ordered them yet, so I'm going to take them out of the budget. And then a month from now, we decide, okay, now we can order them. I have to come back to you and get authority again to spend that money. So once as long as we think we may spend that money, we're going to leave it in the budget.
Or alternatively, if the board thinks that because we're overspent by a significant amount and the fund balances are all going to go down, we could say, if you already have something on order, so you haven't paid the money yet, but it's already in process, that's one thing. But if it's something like you haven't even started on a certain project and there's nothing spent yet, that maybe to get a more balanced budget, it might be. I'm just trying to determine the authority here, because there's a lot of money and almost $800,000 reduction in the fund balance at the end of the year is a concern to me.
And you can do that. The board, at this meeting, you can say, we don't want to spend $35,000 on servers, and we'll take it out of the budget, and then we can't do it. Yeah.
General Manager Gruber.
Those are good questions. If you look in the wastewater budget, there are certain items that we budgeted that we anticipate getting done, and then there's a few items that, excuse me, I'm tied up here, that we may not get done. And it's nice to be able to. I'll give you an example. There's some. And it was one of your questions, and I thought it was a really good question. Regarding the camera and the videotaping, the money that we set aside for that. So a budget document, because it's fluid and things do come up, we realized that after the heavy rains, that and the water table being so high and the plant being inundated with floodwaters, it's a good idea to take those funds and to get up in the canyons and start popping the manholes and evaluating those type of things and address and identify. And so in next year's budget, we can address some of the leaks that are coming in from the top of the manholes. So what we did is, after these heavy rains the last week or so, we went up in the canyons, Strawberry Canyons and some of the other canyons, and we determined that even though some of the manholes were raised, they were still underwater, which is inundating the wastewater plant. So we went ahead and we have about 660 manholes, 665, something like that. So we identified 27 of them up in the canyons, and we ordered manholes that are waterproof, that doesn't allow the water to get in. So will we do the cameraing and the videoing this year? No. Because our priorities shifted based on the inundation from the rains. Now the server, that was a good question too. The server was put in there for two reasons. Our IT strongly suggested that we replace the servers because they're old, and then we've been contemplating. We haven't made a decision yet on moving. And that conversation has been going on for some period of time, whether that happens or not. And there was money allocated within the admin budget to relocate those servers. They would be up at the fire department. We don't want to buy new servers and stick them where we are now. We want to have our servers up at the fire department, up at the EOC. But you are right. On some of these things, especially on the wastewater side, there's areas where when you approve the budget for 16-17, the $551,000 was a loan. Well, if we don't, because of events that have happened, such as the rains and infrastructure issues and things like that, if we don't get to all these projects, it'll result in a budget at the end of the year showing less of a deficit than we're projecting. Based on our CIP projects that we're working on with the infrastructure, with the infrastructure ad hoc committee, we can reprioritize some of those things. But throughout the budget, except maybe in fire, there are things, mostly wastewater, that we've budgeted that we may not necessarily get to, and water that we may not necessarily get to. So I hope a long answer, but those are good questions.
Director Bering.
No, I just want to comment that what we're doing now is we're getting a mid-year budget review. You are saying that you are projecting deficits in different areas because of certain things. We can give you guidance to try and not spend, to encourage you to not spend as much as you feel that you have scheduled, because we want to maintain as much cash as available, but you are trying to keep these things in the budget in the event you need to do it, and staff determines that this is a priority, that you want to do this year, you can do it. So I'm just giving my general opinion, is that it's nice going through the budget. It's not great seeing the fact that it's more of a deficit than we expected. There are some things that are very clear. The rains have brought down a lot of trees. The ranch has never been funded, from when we purchased it. So and we can't, now we no longer are stealing as much from the general fund. We're trying to get water and wastewater to be self-supportive so that we can use general funds to do things in the future. So that's kind of a summary of what I'm seeing here.
Madam President, and I think Director Beringer, I'll give you an example. If I could just have a few minutes on page 3 and 4, 3 of 4, I'm sorry, not 3 and 4, 3 of. This is for wastewater. This is page 75 at the top, and then 3 and 4, it's attachment E.
Thank you.
So if you go over to the purchase of the influence screen, the bar screen that's going to remove all that stuff that's getting into the plant, it's finished. It's been done. It's fabricated, and we paid one invoice the other day for $27,000. And so this is all one project. We had to do some soil boring to see where we wanted to put that system would work. So we got the soil boring done. We got the report back. And so we're going to be, making some more payments on that. And then the construction and installation, Corella Engineering is working on the designs of that, and it should be completed within the next month or so, but we haven't made them any payments. We might be under budget on that estimated amount. I'm hopefully that we can get it installed and get all the engineering done for cheaper than that. The clarifiers, the $65,000, one was for a new gearbox. We've ordered that. That was $25,000. And then when we met with the infrastructure ad hoc committee, John had pointed out that some of the guides on the clarifier, the flights, I'm forgetting the word. Anyway, those need to be replaced. So hopefully we can get all that done this fiscal year. But if we don't, then it'll go into this enterprise fund back into wastewater. These are pretty big ticket items. The effluent pumps, going to the next page, we've had to replace, both of those. They're very old, but we replaced them. The handrails too. What we've decided is, although we've started doing them in-house, we'll probably hire somebody to fabricate them for us versus having somebody come in and professionally just put them in place. The lift station repairs, those are ongoing, and the grit pump, we made repairs to it and we saved $10,000 there. So I guess what I'm saying from the deficit perspective of the wastewater plant, we may finish a year with it not being as much as we anticipated, but that doesn't mean that money doesn't need to be spent next year or into the future. So
no, I understand that, but this is also about the budget authority for the remainder of this year, and I frankly am not terribly comfortable with the deficits in each of the funds for this year, when it appears that if you could prioritize some of these things. I don't know, because I'm not the person that's the technical engineer about the handrails or lift stations. That's your job, but maybe tighter prioritization on what we know we could actually do, then gives us a bottom line that's less frightening to the board president, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I don't like the fact that it's better than the one that we had passed in June. It looks like that we have closed the gap between revenues and expenditures based on the one that was approved in, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the expenditures outran the revenues on the original budget by almost $2 million, around $2 million. So you've closed the gap a little bit on that, but it says that, well, we want to do all these things, but doesn't say anything about whether or not you think that you can get them done. And this is one of the goals that I have for the board, that the board approved, is to try and get our arms around the priorities for the district so that we don't have a lot of unspent monies that we've budgeted, like in the past, on projects that had been stuck in the budget, but then they didn't get around to them. I want to stop having that happen and stop having everybody going in 14 directions. Until we have somebody hired, Mr. Alchin is responsible for a heck of a lot of things, and I'm glad he's getting them done, but let's not bite off more than we can chew and create a budget that just has a lot of extra spending authority from the board, because the reality is we are going to spend it. We understand that. But we also, with further time, we will have more revenue because more bills will go out for rates, and more, we will have more income with more time passing. So I just want to try and I want you to try and be, this is where I'm going with this. I want to be realistic about what it is that we can actually get done.
I can appreciate that. I don't necessarily know that we will have more revenue, even if, well, in theory, if we do adjust the rates, but what I would recommend is when we approve this budget for the wastewater department, it was a loan of $551,000, right, for this budget, and the board approved that. Instead of removing things and losing the momentum we figured out we have middle of March to April to May, May to June. We have 3.5 months left. I would suggest, at least from the infrastructure perspective, that we allow the staff to continue to see what they can do, especially with the influent bar screens and the lift stations and things like that, as opposed to, and I understand what you're saying. We all feel like we're going 40 different directions all the time. But that's just, I guess that's just the nature of the industry.
Yeah, your title isn't specific manager, it's general manager.
General
but maybe you can
manager.
set some priorities, and that would help with the budgeting and the budget, and help me be more comfortable with the budget authority. It's likely that the rest of the board, I don't know, frankly, don't know how they feel about having the budget authority be so much in the red, but I think that's what I would like to hear from them. And I completely am baffled by the amount in the water budget for penalties. Yeah, it was
penalties
confusing
are
to
late
me.
fees. We don't collect penalties anymore. These are all late fees. We
That
get
was
about
all late
36
fees?
And if you look, it says penalties shut off totals to late fees.
Okay, and I do want to comment that I do appreciate the additional breaking out that was done here with regard to what expenditures are going on in each of the little sub-accounts of each of the funds. I definitely appreciate that. So really, $25,000 in late fees so far.
We had $4,500 this
time.
billing period.
Wow, okay.
We sent out 48 shut-off notices.
You have some really good questions. If you would like to go through them, we have all the answers for them. It may not be the answers you want, but we have. I mean, it's whatever you want to do. We have.
No, I would like to, because I think I got some of them. Some of them are kind of already answered with that one about the penalties. You want to go through the ones?
We're going to go through them.
Please do, because I know you got prepared for them.
Madam President went through the different departments and question. So let's start with admin. Last year, the franchise fee, we rehearse this, so we're going to dovetail on each other, if you don't mind. Last year, the franchise fee was $81,000 263 according to the audit. Why budget is less this year? Patrick? Turn your mic on.
That was an accurate observation, and we should, when I went back and looked at it, it looks like we're going to hit about 86,000 this year. So I could amend the budget next year. I could even do it this year if you wanted, but next year we'd put it up at about 88. It was just not something that I took time to analyze, to tell you the truth.
No, Madam President, that's the franchise fee for waste management?
For garbage, yeah.
No, weren't we anticipating asking for a revision of the rate that we're getting? And is that in the budget, or could that be in next year's budget?
Oh, yeah, it could be in next year's budget. I'm not familiar with a rate increase, but if we
Yeah, I
want-
think we get
Yes.
6%,
We're getting
and almost
6%.
everybody else gets 10.
Right.
So,
Yes. It could be.
we accidentally learned that when they came to give us a rate increase, that in their spreadsheet, everybody's 10 except for us, we're at 6. So, that's something we can add. Now, anyway, we'll address that next time, but
Yeah.
that could be a source of revenue.
Okay.
Number B, is the raise you intend to propose to the board for the new position, Carolyn, will that be included? I assume you're saying, will that be included in this year's? Yes. And it's for the remainder of this fiscal year. So the answer to that is yes. And in Patrick's analysis, he
I did see that
Yeah.
was
In the
in
staff
the
report.
narrative, so I apologize. I
The
missed
amount,
it.
okay, number C, the amount budgeted for director salaries should probably be adjusted to reflect the small increase to director's pay for the next few months. Yes, it should be. We agree with that.
I
Yeah,
want you
the
to have the
current-
authority to pay the directors.
Right, the current budget is 18. It looks like we're going to spend about 21 this year, and perhaps we budget 24 next year.
The 21,000.
Jerry, is it realistic to replace the servers and spending on the website in a few months? I hate to kick the can, well, I won't read that part. I hate to kick the can down the road, but the bottom line is, so we can defer, if I'm hearing that's what you want to do, we can defer the servers. The website is gone live, I think, or pretty close to it, and so we've totally redone the website for a bunch of different reasons, but if it's the board's desire to defer the servers until we see what's going on as far as our location, I don't have a problem with that at all. I really don't.
Yeah, do I have, since we're on this, is that acceptable? Is that acceptable? So can we, it's 35,000 in admin that's already in
That's
the
great.
black, but let's
Okay,
do
I'm gonna-
that.
Patrick, what is the loan proceeds budgeted for $551,000 with $143,643 to date, and the $482,700 as amended?
The original $550,000 loan anticipated from the general fund was equal to the capital projects budget of $551,000. The actual is equal to the actual spent. So whatever we've been spending, I'm saying, okay, that's how much loan we have to take. And the projected is based on what we're projecting we're going to eventually spend all year. That's what I'm projecting we're going to have to loan or have to borrow from the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Is it realistic to attempt to do the CCTV and cleaning in the next few months?
I think you answered
No.
that one.
I know we need, okay.
I know we need to do it.
Yeah.
I understand that, and I don't want to put it off, and I understand what you're saying, but I mean, realistically, with the staffing we have, and, I mean, I just want to try and I want to be less in the red on some of these things,
Absolutely.
and I think if you tighten the budget down, you can do that.
Madam President?
Yes.
Although I did hear the general manager state that even though he's not going to do the filming, we're progressing on new covers so that we don't have much I&I.
Yeah.
So it won't be the whole total reduction, but it'll be a reallocation of some of it.
Madam President, I just want to say, hopefully our budget will not remain as much in the red as your dress is.
Thank you.
Are the handrails finished? No, that's an ongoing process, but
Okay.
I think staff has rethought this, and even if we don't build them ourselves, we can have somebody do it a heck of a lot cheaper and I thought Director Farmer and Director Berenger saw what has been made to date by staff, and it's phenomenal. I mean, but the problem is he doesn't have time to make them all, so.
Indeed.
And what I might comment just on the visit, the fiberglass handrails have all been painted with a strong paint. I forget what they call
Epoxy.
it. Epoxy paint. So that is all done and it's looking very good. The rotted out handrails were being replaced by John, and he's gotten some of them done, and he just doesn't have the time anymore, so we might be outsourcing that, but he did a great job in-house. And it's probably cheaper than when we were looking at it, when I was looking at it, when we were looking at it more than a year ago.
Much
much better.
Much cheaper.
Yeah.
I like this. What is the long-term debt general fund from? Is it payments over more than a one-year budget?
Yeah, that's
This is in the wastewater.
fund,
This
and
is
that was
wastewater.
the payment for the loan, the $551,000 loan, at 2% for 8 years. And if it's less, then we'll bring a resolution to the board to create a loan between the wastewater fund and the water fund.
And I appreciate you going through all these
No, this is
details, but
important.
I think it's critical because this is budget authority I want you to have the authority to spend what you need, but I would be, frankly, if it was me, I would be embarrassed to bring a budget that was this far in the red to a board to ask them to approve it. I'm glad that you're being able to justify all of the expenditures. Might not be a bad time to relook at our contract with the balanced public relations. We can't afford it, clearly.
You know, it's a tough decision, and my position as general manager is I want to be fiscally responsible. However, if our rates, in wastewater especially, let's talk about wastewater, if our rates don't support the ability to continue to improve our infrastructure, and I tell you I can do without, and I cut a bunch of things, we're only perpetuating what has occurred over the last 15 to 20 years. So although I'm a fiscal conservative, I want the board from a policy standpoint to evaluate, and the infrastructure committee is doing that, evaluate our needs. I don't think I'm doing a service to the board or to the community if, as you referenced on another item up here, kick the can down the road. So of course I'm going to be fiscally responsible, but I'm going to continue to tell you that you need to put emphasis on your infrastructure. And if we don't do that, when I'm gone 5 years from now, or 4 years from now, or whenever, or 6 years from now, I'm only going to leave a legacy for someone else and for the community that's going to be worse off. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from. But the way I look at it from an infrastructure perspective is it's the same as your car. You can put money in your car and sustain its life, or you can let it get to the point where it's beyond repair and you have to buy a new car. I'm trying to take this existing car that we have and make it as reliable as possible. It's unfortunate that it represents $400 and something thousand in deficits, but we need to look more broader at our infrastructure and continue to make improvements. So I absolutely appreciate we're coming from different places. I agree.
I wholeheartedly support the infrastructure maintenance and repairs that need to be done. I wholeheartedly do. What I'm trying to say is that when your budget is a limited budget, and we do need to do a wastewater rate study. That was part of what the rate committee did look at. We kind of ignored that side of it right at that moment because that's because of what we were looking at the time. I'm not saying that doesn't need to be done. This is good practice for when we're all built out and don't have any new meters we can sell, for one thing. That's another, you can't just go, well, let's just sell meters because that'll solve the problem. We still have maintenance and repairs that'll have to be done going forward after we give out a meter that we are authorized to. But there's a scattershot effect here that's happening that isn't, it feels like if we can focus down, we can get more done by setting priorities. And it sounds like to me, based on the reports from Director Farmer and Director Behringer and you, that you are working on getting that. I'm just saying, without that further focus, scattershot, it might be great when you're trying to make something that looks like stars in the sky, but, you know, it doesn't get the job done for all of the things. You got to
Right.
concentrate on one thing at a time.
And we're doing it, and I think under your leadership, we're doing exactly that. I think the infrastructure ad hoc committee, although Director Behringer this is his second term on it, I think it can be absolutely overwhelming. And I think Director Farmer, I'm not going to speak for him, but it can be overwhelming. And so I think the approach that you recommended when we adopted our goals is spot on. And I think that's what we're trying to do that. So.
And I appreciate that.
President
Director Thompson.
Rice, it seems to me, unless there's any real urgency to approving this amended budget, wouldn't it be helpful to have the Finance Committee again meet with the staff and come back and address these issues?
I like this suggestion if it's something that General Manager Gruber and
What we can do is
Patrick are able
Patrick and
to-
I and Bob, we can meet with the Water Department and we can meet with the Wastewater Department and we can say what is realistic
For
us to
what
be
can
able-
get done.
For what we can get done in the remainder of the year. But, you know, it's just up to the.
And I know you don't like to kick the can.
No, I
Director
don't
Behringer,
like
let's
doing
hear
it
what you
at
have to
all.
say.
I would like to move that we accept this mid-year budget and direct staff to get together with the Finance Committee to see where the deferral opportunities are, such as the server. And because I don't think there's any real reason we have to, this is a courtesy, I think, more than something that's required. The mid-year budget review is it something that's required to have a mid-year budget review?
It doesn't have to be at the mid-year, but by the end of the year. Typically, we have a mid-year around January or February, and then we have an end of the year around May. And, maybe with this discussion, we don't really need to adopt a mid-year. We could move on down to, wait a month or two and then see more clearly where we are.
Okay, no motions required. I would support the suggestion.
I wouldn't, if we did not approve the recommended budget today, the effect essentially would be you would be restricted to the expenditures that were already approved on the last time we approved the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But, and there isn't anything that would be outside that realm that would cause you to have a problem with your momentum or any of those things?
Two things in particular, and this is directly proportional to our meeting with Regional Water Quality Control Board. And that is understanding the staffing needs for that particular system. So within this mid-year budget adjustment, there's two areas. I want to show the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the community that we're serious about operating that facility. I think as we look back, asking Justin to run that facility and be our water supervisor was probably unrealistic. Not probably, it was very unrealistic. And then putting John into that situation, and although he did well, is also probably unrealistic. So since February 1st, it's been, literally all of us, and I say all of us, the Water, Wastewater Department, Bob, myself, Carolyn, have been working to make sure that all the reports are done in time, all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, the plant's running the way it should. In this mid-year budget, I recommend for the remainder of this fiscal year, assuming that the individual starts in May, which I probably don't think is going to happen, that we hire a sustainable water facility chief plant operator. That was not my suggestion, that was the suggestion of the Regional Water Quality Control Board, but I concur with that. And then they're not going to be out there twiddling their thumbs when the facility's not running. They'll be helping Jason and the rest of the water department on doing things that haven't been able to get done. More importantly is the critical role to have somebody specifically assigned to do these reports. I want to transition by April, May, away from CDM. I want to take ownership of the reports. And what I'm proposing in this is to elevate Carolyn to a position that would be 5% higher than the Admin Tech 3. And a little bit about her background. She has an MPH, which is a Master's in Public Health, and has a great deal of experience in laboratory work and analysis and things like that. And so I think that's going to be important to continue the momentum we have and to establish or reestablish some credibility with the regulatory agencies. So those are the two things that I would ask, if nothing else, the board consider. It's not that much of a increase for the remainder of the fiscal year, but I'm afraid if we don't do it, we're not going to be able to run that facility the way it needs to be run. And also, it's a credibility issue with the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I made some promises to the Regional Water Quality Control Board when I walked out of there February 1st. I think I've kept all those promises, to include a public apology, but to also get all our reports in on time, making sure that I'm sending them daily summaries. And we have to continue that momentum, and we have to continue being committed.
Would it be possible to bring back the job descriptions and the salary schedules on the 23rd as part of?
Not on the 23rd. What I was hoping, what I planned on doing is bringing back both the job descriptions and the salary in April to you, because it would allow me to some more time. So I could.
Can you do it within the budget authority you currently have?
I was just looking at that.
Uh-huh.
If we don't take any action, the general fund is okay, because if you net it out, the admin department is going to be higher than the others. And in the water department, we're okay, because the authority, we have the authority to spend the money. We were just budgeted $660,000 in revenue that's not going to come in.
Right.
There's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
But we don't have,
And we'll have to consider doing a loan from the general fund for what was already spent if we
well, we
want
have to
to
look
do,
at that.
whether or not we do that.
I'm not
So,
sure.
so we do have the budget authority if we bring the job descriptions and salary schedules back in April to be able to hire somebody and start the process?
Yes.
Yes.
And what I would like to do
Okay.
is with Carolyn, and Carolyn is just done an incredible job and an important part of the team, and so
Agreed.
yeah, I think we could do that. I think we could do that.
Madam President, in the wastewater fund, there are some things that we are doing, the rag picker for one thing, and others that, even though there's a deficit in that fund, I would like to, if we can today, to give the budget authority for that fund to be in the negative as it is. Because I don't think we can defer those things. And if they can't order the equipment or anything because they don't have the budget authority to run a deficit in that fund.
The only way, I was going to discuss that directly, the only way we could stay within our spending authority in the water fund and the wastewater fund is to not proceed with the influence screen or the bar.
Right, and that's critical. It's the old rags thing, and it's been damaging that plant for the longest period of time. And so if I move that we have the general manager prepare.
You don't have the budget authority?
No, he doesn't. Not in the wastewater fund.
Not if we make all the other expenditures we need to make for repairs and stuff that we've already spent. That's where the $232,000 deficit.
Okay.
And I move that we give the budget authority to achieve, or to have a deficit of $232,000 in the wastewater fund. And because it's going to be a bigger budget next year, and we'll have a good opportunity to make priorities on.
So essentially requesting to approve the changes, or the amended wastewater fund.
Correct.
Budget.
And then the rest can go to the Finance Committee.
And it's causing Madam President, it's causing a lot of operational problems. It's causing.
And you don't have to convince me. I know, I hear the justifications there, and I would second that motion.
I'll second Director Behringer's motion.
Okay. And the rest will go to the Finance Committee, yes?
Right.
Okay. Does everyone understand the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a roll call. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no, thank you for your questions. I'm not done with your questions yet. Are you done with your
I know,
questions?
but we can cover it in the Finance
Okay.
Committee, and we'll bring back
All right.
the important ones to let folks know.
Director Behringer.
Aye.
Director Thompson.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye. Thank you very much. That's a great solution. Thank you, Director Behringer. I want to mention, since we're all sitting here, the IWM, what is it, the Waste Management? Can you
Integrated
please-
Waste Management Authority is looking for a dynamic director as a CCSD representative. The position would be representing 10 CCSDs. So you would have a one-person member from CCSD on that board, and
So if you'd like
It's-
to
it's an
represent that
important-
board, we're going to
important
consider
board.
that coming forward. So if you'd like to do that, think about it. Oh, I think Director Farmer.
Thank you. By the way, one of the items that came up yesterday at the tour of the wastewater facility was the fact that we have it's called a vac truck, and it goes out and cleans out the sewer lines and also does maintenance at the wastewater facility. And that vehicle is old and aging, probably just as fast as my '67 Volkswagen. And as a result, that's another item that's about a $500,000 expenditure. But what I wanted to say is, first off, President Rice, I want to commend you for obviously doing your homework and really studying this document that we have here and bringing up so many issues that needed to be addressed today. It really, I think it's a source of encouragement to all of us that all of the folks out there watching that this has taken place. And I think it's something to be encouraged by, that you're doing your job. I also want to say that I want to appreciate what the general manager is doing and trying to get things a little bit more up to speed than we've seen in the past, and we'll see what happens in the future. But I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the ratepayers out there that have been watching this and will be watching this meeting in the future, and hearing us talking about deficits and revenue not meeting expenditure, while they're looking at the fact that they just got a rate increase, and wondering how does this all work out and what's my future as a ratepayer in this community. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I don't know what to say to those people other than we will do the best we can for you, considering what's on the horizon as a board and as a district. And that's about what I want to say.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Director Thompson?
I want to also, maybe the first time I'm seconding a motion from Director Farmer, but I do appreciate the fact that you ran a very tight meeting today and really helped to focus issues on where we need to go with finances. Just a couple points, I think, as we are entering into new budget year. I think folks need to understand that we are going to have to consider the long-term issue of the safer firefighters and how we're going to fund them, and also I think questions about the use of our general fund for ranch maintenance. I think perhaps it's time we start looking for alternative sources of funding for that purpose. Facilities and resources budget is fairly high, and I think that that it's possible to secure funding from other sources for taking care of our ranch, but I think we need to put it out there for the community so they can also weigh in on it.
Thank you, Director Thompson. I completely concur with that. Thank you very much. I think we are adjourned. Next meeting is the 23rd, and it's going to be a 4 p.m. meeting.